Well, let's speak to Lee Middleton, the Chief Executive of the National Youth Agency. Lee, thank you for joining us this afternoon. On your website, it says that your mission is to transform the lives of young people in England and beyond through the power of youth work. Have you been able to do that since March, and do you think you will be able to do that in the future?
Thank you for, it's been an interesting process, the whole pandemic. It forced the complete closure of most of the youth services across the country. The impact that's had is to take those vital support services away from young people. Our sector's been pretty resilient. We've moved online. We've tried to support young people in different ways, but it's just not the same. You can't support people unless you can be with them, and the impact will be quite profound as we move forward.
And what about the finances? How badly have you been hit financially? Presumably you rely on funding and fundraising. That's been impossible since March.
Yeah, we're seeing two areas of concern, really. The hit to local authorities, they've had to pick up a big bill for the cost of COVID, the need to provide food and the sort of tracing services, etc. And that money has to come from somewhere else. And we've already lost £1 billion from the youth sector in the last 10 years. There's not a lot left, but we are concerned that that money will be bypassed or moved into supporting further be further cuts to support that service. And then the other big area, yes, is the fundraising that goes on in grassroots community organisations that support, our frontline services. Things like the cancellation of the London Marathon, the mass runners component raises tens and tens of millions that support young people across the country. And the fact that that alone isn't taking place means that those organisations just won't have that income, and it'll have a lasting effect on what they can and can't do for young people.
Have you had to furlough your workforce?
Ourselves, no. We decide we're the national body, so we look after the whole of the youth sector. So it was too important for us to roll our sleeves up and get going and support our sector with guidance and advice and training. But we have seen lots of the youth sector organisations and partners having to furlough staff. Staff not being able to get insurance because of the pandemic, and therefore having to sort of deliberately, who would like to work but have been unable to, so they've had to be furloughed. And organisations who've seen hit to their income or not being able to access their community premises and having no choice but to furlough staff. So there's been a lot of staff furloughed across our sector.
So what would give your sector a lift now? A few weeks ago, the Chancellor spoke about £750 million worth of funding for the charity sector. Is that enough? Is that a drop in the ocean? Do you need a lot more funding, a lot more supports in that regard?
Yeah, national bodies that look after charities, NCVO, they were predicting something like £4 billion was going to be needed. So 750 million, plus the furlough support has been very welcome and very helpful, but it is nowhere near enough to offset the complete loss to the sector. The whole of society is struggling, is feeling the pain. There are lots of job losses in lots of spaces. The challenge for the youth sector is we rely on grant trust funds, we rely on public money, we rely on the brilliant generous donations of the public, and that has dried up because you can't do fun runs, you can't do activities, school fetes, the sorts of activities that generate the income that enable youth services, youth activities, your local youth club to take place. Just has not been able to access the funding that would have been there previously, and it's profound.
And I guess in many ways now more than ever, we need to be looking after our young people, given the current economic climate and the cliff edge that we are at the very cusp of.
Yeah, from our perspective, young people have been one of the most hardest hit from the pandemic. We talk a lot, we see a lot in the news around older generations because they're medically more vulnerable. But actually our young people, you're only young once. You get one opportunity to be a teenager, one opportunity to grow up. And it takes a very short space of time, actually, that you do a lot of your development. And we're seeing, that's been hit hard. You've been told to stay at home, you can't see your friends, you can't socialise, you can't connect with people. And in terms of the core youth services, about 1 million young people would normally access our work across the country, or the work of our sector. But our research has shown that nearly 3 times that now needs support. It's been really hard on young people, but we need to focus much more on their needs and be providing the support, because they're the ones that are going to pay the bill for the COVID-19. They're the ones that are going to grow up, be adults, pay their taxes. They'll be picking up the bill for this. So we know as a country, as a nation, we need to be investing in them now and for the next 10 years to support them.
Okay, Lee Middleton, Chief Executive of the National Youth Agency. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.